ruling All Progressive Congress, the APC, is on the verge of putting its house in order. Yesterday, Governor Abubakar Bello of Niger State, who is now the acting national chairman of the Caretaker Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee, CECPC of the All Progressive Congress, has announced the notice of meeting of the National Executive Committee, NEC, of the party, where an official seal of the approving organ of the party will be secured. Bello, who has since moved to stabilize the party, met with members of the Caretaker Committee and, as part of his first set of assignments, announced the date for NEC and also pruning down of the National Convention subcommittees earlier constituted by the sacked Mai Mala Buni leadership to accommodate other equal critical interests in the party, from the party's leaders to the governors and members of the National Assembly. Buni, according to very reliable sources, is due back in the country tomorrow from Dubai, where he had gone for medical checkup. He is, however, expected to cooperate with the new arrangement in the interest of the party. Also, some of the governors elected on the party's platform realigned for new reality in the party. Some had immediately switched loyalty from Buni and declared support for Bello, depicting the advent of a new era. Meanwhile, a group called the APC Youth Development and Solidarity Forum has declared Buni's removal as chairman of CECPC as illegal and akin to a coup. A coup?
Well, I have no idea what that means. Does it mean that they're just expressing their, loyalty to Mai Mala Buni, or are they contemplating legal action? I guess we'll find out. But yes, there was a lot of huffing and puffing that was reported yesterday. But the show did go on, which it must, since INEC has spoken, and there is now a deadline of June 3rd for all the political parties to present their presidential candidates. And I think for me, the whole Mai Mala Buni saga to end in this fashion, I'm sure there's nobody more amused than Adam Toshiomole. But I think it just boils down to all the vacillation that we saw. Somebody, I want to attribute this because I thought it was so funny, but I can't remember where I first saw APC always postponing convention as the name of the party. They were making the party look completely ridiculous, and I guess action had to be taken. There have been, 4 postponements, so something did have to be done, unfortunately, and we can see the danger of sit-tightism, how it consistently rears its head in politics, whether it's within internal democracy, that context, or in other contexts that we've seen. Mai Mala Buni's committee was supposed to have a duration of 6 months. It was extended, but I'm sure at no point was it envisaged that it would last almost 2 years. It was inaugurated initially June of 2020. So it has to end, but unfortunately it's quite ignoble the way that it did end. It would have been a lot tidier if the convention had held last month, and by now we will not be having this conversation. But I do hope that the damage to the party is not sincere. I hope that for their sake is not severe, because, like I said, always postponing convention and other such mockeries that, happening to the ruling party is really very unfortunate. It's one thing if that happens in an opposition party, because you were saying yesterday that PDP doesn't really have all their ducks in a row. But this is the ruling party, so it has implications for the governance of this country. And in a time like this is the last thing APC needs. So we do hope that it's calm seas going forward till the convention, and finally we can just, close this chapter.
I mean, what I saw yesterday for me, Tunde, was akin to a motor park anywhere near you, and when they're about to change power for who is the chairman of the motor park. They get all the guards in place, probably use presence of violence to intimidate or police, and then they change power forcefully. And that is what has become the lot of the APC. And like you said, let's not forget it's the ruling party. What I saw yesterday in the APC was illegality taking a top seat, sitting gallantly on a royal seat. The Constitution is clear. There are laid down procedures according to the law. You can't take out Buni the way you took him out. There's going to be a backlash. People will go to court. This is just the beginning of more problems and crises and confusion in the APC. There are subsisting court orders against this convention that has not been vacated. This is another one. People will challenge this. So I fear even that 26th of March, if it's going to hold any water any longer. It is becoming obvious, and I like your article today, Dr. Abati, at the back page, and I think everybody should read that article written by Dr. Reuben Abati today on the back page of This Day, that politicians are fast using political parties as special purpose vehicles. And you charted a clear narrative about what happened in Zamfara, how somebody used the PDP to get into power in Zamfara. Now he went back to the APC. Now he sacked the PDP deputy governor. This gestaporic style. And that's why I keep saying, politicians, please stop all of this. Don't make Nigerians feel they're insane, because this is clear insanity you are pushing on Nigerians. If a party cannot have internal democracy, how does that party hope to support democracy outside? And it's not only the APC. The PDP to check litany of troubles. Look at what's happening in Edo. Yes.
That's another one.
New scandal breaking out in Edo. The same person that got into power using the PDP now says, oh, the PDP is not good enough for me. Now they are threatening to leave again. Please, politicians, leave better legacy for the people in the country. But this will backfire. That report says Buni will cooperate. Are we sure?
So you don't believe it's going to...
Let's watch and see. Get your popcorn. Nigeria is a movie.
Oh, dear.
Okay, this is my view on this matter. I expect that the APC will come forward in a few hours, perhaps, and then say, oh, this is a family affair, we have resolved it. I'm not too sure that Buni personally will go to court.
Okay.
Because he himself got to that position, on the goodwill of the president of Nigeria, who put him in charge. And, okay, if the president truly, as alleged, is the person who has now said, this is what I now want. Okay, he's not in a position to do anything. He can come back from Dubai. He would, as I expect, fall in line. The way political parties are organized, there's always somebody in charge. There are, or maybe if you like, there's always a cabal in charge of the political party. And people are expected to fall in line. If you fall out of line, they will dispense of you immediately. Okay? So whoever is pulling the strings in the APC, I just decided that, okay, moving forward, maybe Buni is no longer useful. And they've asked him to step down. I don't expect that he will come back from Dubai and he will stand up and fight the president of Nigeria, who has shown his hand as the leader of the APC. Two, the other issues involved is that there's internal fighting, internal wrangling within the APC. The APC itself was a special purpose vehicle, a coalition. I like to describe them as, what is that popular phrase again, help me, of, different kinds of, a
motley crew?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Strange bedfellows?
Strange bedfellows. Okay, they put these strange bedfellows together. And then what you have found is that you have the ACN faction, the CPC faction, the ANPP faction, the new PDP faction, all fighting within for the dominance of the party. What we're seeing is part of it. The third point is that, yes, the APC would like to remain in power. They have seen the People's Democratic Party dominating power for a total of about 16 years, right? They too would like to do the same thing. They would like to remain in power. But they have issues because their system was cobbled together. It was a coalition. And so you have all these factions, all these forces trying to dominate. Now that the party itself, Nigeria is at a moment of transition, but the APC itself, as a ruling party, is at the brink of a transition, whether they like it or not. That's what the calendar tells us. And what we're seeing is the effect of that transition. Now, how they resolve it will depend on individual choices. And I think that the main role player here is President Muhammadu Buhari himself. Does he want to leave behind a party a special purpose vehicle that he used as a ladder to realize his ambition. The president ran again and again and again, but in 2015, 2014, he got it right, and he became president of Nigeria. Okay, will he allow the ladder to collapse after his exit? The question is, does he care about what goes forward? And that's why I think the president, where you can find a moral justification for the president coming in and saying, look, this is what I want. However, his own attorney general, who is also a member of the party, had pointed out that, look, it's only the National Executive Committee of the party that can remove the sitting chairman, whether it's caretaker or whatever it is. Okay? But now we are being told, oh, the president, this is the order that he has given. And that's where your point about people going to court comes in. But who will go to court? Nigerian politicians are just opportunistic. They weigh the balance of gains and losses, and so it may happen that nobody may go to court. So at the end of the day, you find people like Chairman Bisi Akande, the first original chairman of the party, sitting down and having a laugh in his living room. You have Chief Odige Oyegun saying, well, I told them, look at them. Or you have former governor of Edo State, Adams Oshiomhole, saying, have you heard his voice in this matter?
No.
He's alive. The man is alive. All these people I've mentioned, they are alive. So Oshiomhole will say, okay, look at them. Let them do it. Let us see it. So what we have had, the main problem here is, in a larger context, how political parties are organized. And I keep saying, look, the PDP made this same mistake in 2014, 2015. The APC is about to make the same mistake, except they pull themselves together. I'm not a member of their political party. I'm just an analyst on television. But I see that, look, history may well be about to repeat itself. So that's my take on this subject.
Thank you so much for your take, Dr. Batia and Tundu. We'll see how it goes, Dr. Batia.
So we'll take a short break.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from South Africa. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. China leads the way down this morning. Asian stocks not down as much as a very volatile session on Wall Street last night, which I'll tell you about. But basically, shares in Asia Pacific declined. Shanghai, mainland Shanghai, down about 2%. I've got it as it's closing. And the CSI 300 index, which tracks the largest mainland stocks, down about 1.6. The Hang Seng down 2. The Nikkei slipped as well, about 0.5%. China is upholding its relationship with Russia. This is the best way I can put it. I'm not really sure what they're saying right now. They're saying that negotiations are needed to solve the Ukraine conflict. Well, I think we probably all realize that's absolutely true. It has its own relationship, it says, with Russia. And there are no limits and no forbidden areas of cooperation with Russia. However, I would say, from what I'm reading as far as geopolitical diplomats are concerned this morning, that if it were a long war, then all that would do would be to rejuvenate the West, because we've seen what unanimity there is now amongst the EU, the United States, and the UK, and so on. And China doesn't want that. China's trying to paint the Western allies as beyond their time, a bit like the fall of the Roman Empire. Anyway, that's a geopolitical question for later on. As far as Japan's concerned, logging the highest current account deficit since 2014. That's down to the oil imports that it's actually needed. And certainly, though it does show that the country is coming out of the pandemic relatively fast, it is still the world's #3 economy. Current account deficit of 10.6 $1.31 billion, if that kind of figure means anything to you. And also, I think you're going to hear a little bit more about this. There's a Toyota truck unit called Hino, Hino, which admits has been cheating on its emissions data and its falsified diesel performance. Echoes of other large European companies there. Sri Lanka going through its own problems at the moment. The finance minister there is saying it's going to require some fairly tough medicine to get that back on track. It's got shortages of foods and other essentials. They're going to increase the tax on fuel and so on. Worst economic crises in over 70 years. And that's down to a number of factors, mainly, of course, the pandemic, which closed the economy down. As far as the United States is concerned, stock futures down on the S&P 500, worst day since October 2020. Stock futures fell slightly overnight. That was the S&P's worst day since October. Futures on the Dow about 100 points down as we speak, dipping hugely yesterday. A steep sell-off on Wall Street yesterday for all the kind of reasons that I'm sure I don't need to go through with you. And JP Morgan Chase distinguishing itself. It was going to remove Russian debt from its indices, and it's following that course of, this country is now uninvestable, as it's put. MSCI earlier on last week, Dow Jones, and also FTSE Russell. McDonald's and Coca-Cola. Now, a lot of corporates are saying that they're cutting their view on and their exposure to, and therefore their ability to service, and therefore to Russian customers. McDonald's and Coca-Cola have been a little silent about this, and a lot of social media are saying that it's time for them to speak out. Netflix and Levi's have already suspended sales. That's happened overnight, a bit yesterday and a bit overnight. Levi Strauss, you probably remember, if any of you were lucky enough to go to Russia in the pre-Putin years, it was very much a pair of Levi jeans were almost currency, very much a symbol of freedom and Western capitalist promise. The World Bank has, we were talking a little bit about this yesterday, has actually approved now its $723 million loan to Ukraine to help it fight the invasion. It's still continuing to work on another $3 billion package of support over the coming months, 100 million of that coming from the UK so far. Something which is affecting everybody around the world, and it will be the same in your country, the same in the UK. Petrol prices, pump prices hit another record high as oil and gas jumped to $139 a barrel yesterday. It came back to about 120, and European markets were sort of assuaged a little by the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz saying this is going to push back against American demands to stop buying Russian crude oil, but it remains. They're sort of giving back gains. It gets about 130, 140 during the day, and then it gets down to about 120 again. OPEC Secretary General Mohammed Barkindo has said that OPEC is actually powerless to do anything as far as geopolitics are concerned. This is OPEC's lack of power now. Nothing to do with the cartel or partnership or cooperation, whatever you care to call it. But it's down to the fact that geopolitical events are overtaking this considerably. And gold, we need to watch gold actually as part of that's up again. But the commodities are being weaponized, no question about that. Nickel doubling in price, for example, overnight. So that's something to watch, not necessarily to take on a day-to-day basis because it's so volatile. But I think it's worth noting that this war in Ukraine from Russia is going to affect everybody, and I think we've already covered most of those. But we just take it on a day-to-day basis. That's the global view.
One thing is certain, Michael. With all of this, the world is volatile. The world economy is very fragile. My first question will be: do we have any safe bets at all in all of this? Inflation is going up in Europe. It's not getting any better in America. The Fed is clueless as we speak today. Any safe bets? Any silver lining? Because people are beginning to scream of recession, and that's a place we don't want to go after a pandemic and a war, which is likely where we might go. And secondly, what can Europe do to force the hand of Russia? Because it's obvious, Europe is still largely dependent on Russia, and that's why nothing is happening. That's why they can't cut the plugs on the oil, because Europe still needs the oil from Russia, albeit they still need the gas, just like the Americans need it.
Okay, so as far as energy is concerned, well, it's a question of turning on the taps from somewhere else. And no doubt the search is on right now. There's apparently been quite cordial response from Venezuela, for example, to the US approach to that. We did see a rumor yesterday, didn't we, that Joe Biden was going to see Saudi. It's a question of looking for alternative supplies, and also silver lining, if you want to find one, would come from things like coal stocks, nuclear stocks, and so on, where people are actually turning away from what was only 2 weeks ago a relatively green agenda, away from fossil fuels, and now looking for some kind of alternatives which will take us away from that dependence. So that's silver lining. And if you really want to get down to it, the silver lining would be arms manufacturers and also energy stocks as well, which have risen massively. And certainly, if you really want to take some risk on board, and I'm not a financial advisor, and I would not repeat. You asked for silver linings. It's got to be commodities, hasn't it? As I was saying, those prices are doubling, and commodities are being weaponized. So if you want to get into those waters, that would be the silver lining. I suspect that not many people do.
Okay, quickly, let me ask you, will the U.S. act alone? Because apparently it looks like it's only the U.S. That is very strong on this issue of banning Russian energy imports. And if you look at it critically, how sincere is the United States? Because it looks like, in terms of volume, the United States is not as vulnerable as the EU countries are. So is the United States just playing a mind game? Even the UK can comfortably say, well, we don't care about imports from Russia, considering the fact that the UK gets most of its oil from the North Sea. So are we likely to have a situation, particularly as some lawmakers in the US Congress have come up with legislation to ban Russian oil imports? And then as for the IMF, well, the UK is promising Ukraine over $100 million. The IMF, World Bank, they are also promising support, but these are loans. How do these moves help, this country in any particular way? Does it not look like Zelensky has made a very wrong move, listening to NATO, the US, and the allies? I know you may say this is political, but war in itself is basically political.
Well, you mentioned a word in your question, which was the word was sincere. I don't think anything is sincere. I think what you do in a case like this is follow the money if you want to get the answers to anything. So the question is, as far as Russia and Europe is concerned, it's a question of alternative kind of supplies of energy, number one, and number two, alternative supplies of oil. Again, the search for that is going on. There's no question about this as far as Western allies are concerned, that what is happening to Russia is going to destroy it from inside. Now, whether that means that we have a feral kingdom or a hermit kingdom, I really don't know. I mean, again, I couldn't possibly predict anything like that. But at the moment, in terms of leverage, I still maintain that if it gets too expensive, you bring all sorts of other explorations into play, including fracking, which the United States is very big on, and in fact the UK is too. So I feel as though whatever is actually being posited right now, and whatever the United States says, the United States the United States senators can say what they like. The fact of the matter is that the fracking companies in the United States are crying out for investment. If they were to get that, then I think you'd see a massive change in oil, and the United States would continue as it is right now, the world's largest oil producer. So I think there's a lot to play here, and we add into this the complete unknown, and I don't even know what this is, but I do know this is actually happening, that there are tankers full of Russian crude oil at sea right now, not knowing where they're going and not knowing who's going to buy that oil. So that there are all sorts of different formula here, and let's not even start talking about Iran and the possible talks there that might bring their supply back onto a daily basis. So it's all up to play for right now. I don't think there are any concrete answers. We're looking at shifting sands.
Well, thank you very much.
Right. Now, our dependable Rotus Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. In the theme of International Women's Day, we're looking at growth of female-led SMEs in Nigeria. We know that SMEs are the engine of growth. We know what they contribute to the economy in terms of employment and so on and so forth. So there's been, I guess, a focus, or rather, you can use a day like today to look back and say, have we grown female-led SMEs enough to the point where...
Rotus, hello?
Yes,
okay. Please go ahead.
All right.
The directors were saying they didn't have your audio, but now they have it.
I should shout? Okay, all right. So, so female-led SMEs and growth in female-led SMEs in Nigeria. There's a survey that was carried out by the Fate Foundation. It was part of an SME reports that they had. I think a survey they carried out, male-led SMEs, I think about 57%. We should have that survey up where it shows that, anyway, 50, okay, yeah, there it is. So 57, or is it 50? Yes, 57% male-led SMEs. Female-led 43%. The female-to-male ratio is 0.75 to 1. And that's as far as gender and entrepreneurship in Nigeria is concerned. So, question though, if you're trying to grow, at the artisanal level, if we break it down to the artisanal level, are there gender-specific roles? Like, ordinarily you would say no, but if you do a casual observation, if you ask someone to come and fix your plumbing at home, or fix a broken door, or you're building a home and you get bricklayers and so on, who would most likely show up to carry out those jobs? Or even looking at, downfall bus drivers and so on and so forth. So are we at a point where society, at least here, and there's also in other parts of the world where we've conditioned ourselves to say that these artisanal roles are male only? And if that's the case, how do you get a female plumber or a female bricklayer or right, it's by training, right? But how do you get more? Because if you get them to filter into those particular artisanal jobs, then you would theoretically increase the amount of female-led. Well, that's the thing. How many have you seen? How many plumbers have you?
So there's this woman I have done some work with many years ago. She's called the Lady Mechanic. So all she does is to get women to learn how to be mechanics. And there's another guy too called City Mechanic. In fact, I know of 5 of his mechanics now that are females.
Where are they? Here in Lagos?
Yeah, City Mechanic, yeah.
So we need more of that, basically.
So we just need more of that.
Yeah,
so there are people like that constantly, bridging the gap and teaching them, because you'll be shocked that they have a higher chance of getting jobs with those artisanal skills rather than the white-collar jobs.
Right. Well, okay, that's debatable, but yeah, I get you. I get where you're going. Right?
They have a higher chance.
Yeah.
No, I think the issue is that there is a there's a trend, and it's beginning to change. If you look at some of the some other studies on this subject, there is this book by Marjorie McIntosh, which talks about women, Yoruba women, basically, and social change. And she was arguing that, look, if you look at the Yoruba community, women, in fact, tend to dominate certain aspects of the economy within Nigeria. There's also a book by Sunia Sudakasa, who was titled Where Women Work.
Yeah.
And in that book, she was trying to differentiate how women work in Nigeria. But most of these studies that we have before us, they focus on the marketplace. There's also another study, I don't immediately remember the name of the author, which says that, in fact, in Nigeria, despite the misogyny, the male chauvinism, that, in fact, women are heads of many households, contrary to received orthodoxy or belief. There are many of these women who are the ones feeding their husbands, feeding the families. Okay?
Breadwinners, yeah.
Now, so we go beyond that, and then we look at the fact about the changing trend. Today we have lady mechanics. Yeah. We have ladies who are driving Okada. We have ladies who are Uber drivers. Some of those tourists have been put out there. So in terms of work, the work sociology in Nigeria, it may not be true to say that women are inferior. There are many husbands who wake up in the morning, they are playing games. They are tying wrapper all over the place. They are not doing anything. Right. They are fed by their wives, who are leaders in the household. Where we have the big problem in Nigeria is within the larger cultural and traditional, milieu.
Yes.
Whereby the same man who is tying wrapper, the same man who is playing games in the morning, the same man who is of no use. Some of them are even of no use in the bedroom. They are the ones who will be saying, I'm a man, I'm a man, I'm a man. So we have to pay tribute to our women.
Yes.
And I think it's instructive that, as you pointed out in your introduction, today is International Women's Day.
Correct.
Nigerian women have done a lot historically. They deserve to be celebrated. They deserve to be given the opportunities and empowered. And the biggest scandal that we have on Women's Day is the fact that when the National Assembly, the other week, tried to consider amendments to the Constitution, all the men in the National Assembly, they voted against women.
It is scandalous.
And yet, they will come to that National Assembly, they will parade their wives. They will talk about how many children they have. In other countries, women are part of the equation in terms of decision making, in terms of the development process. So it's good you brought up this issue. No, I don't think that women are lazy. They are not. They've expanded their scope. The subject for today should be about those men who wake up in the morning and they tie wrapper and they are waiting for women to feed them.
Dr. Latis, International.
Tunde, what's your...
Are you sure?
Yeah, well,
of course
no, it's not only in Nigeria that we have this problem. We have it in Singapore. We have it in India.
We do.
Lazy men all over the place.
Tunde, go ahead, please.
I think the point here is that they're male-dominated industries,
Yes.
just as there are female-dominated industries. And the larger point is that men and women might be different in terms of if your particular profession, maybe, I don't know, bricklayer, like you mentioned,
right,
requires brawn rather than, training. You might have more men in that milieu, but there are also women bricklayers, you've seen them. So I think the point that you are trying to make is not that they don't exist. You're trying to talk about there should be more diversity.
Yeah, in those areas.
Yes,
right,
I think that's
so
the point you're trying to make.
Yeah.
And what's important is representation, when people see that it does exist. But also what is important is the culture. There's all kinds of male domination that exists in society. Even in a conversation, women's voices are drowned out. Physically, women are drowned out. Women are oppressed physically. Like we've just recently heard the tragedy of Oluwabamiche. So you talked about calling for a plumber. Can you imagine a woman turning up at the home of a depraved individual? What would happen to her?
That's right.
So you have to think about things like that. So it's not about we're completely equal, but we are different. And the injustice is done when we try to pretend that we are not. Now, I have to rail against the National Assembly. You've talked about how female SMEs, can we pull that your chart up again?
Yeah, 43%.
43%. You can take our money, you can take our contribution to the economy, but you don't even give us citizenship. Because this whole insulting notion that a Nigerian woman who marries a foreigner cannot give him citizenship tells us that we don't actually have it to give. Lawyers know about the Nemodat rule. You cannot give what you don't have.
Right.
You are telling us that we are not citizens. That takes me back to, I don't know, it was in the late 1700s in America, where black people, according to the framers of the American Constitution, were only 3/5 human. That is what you are telling us as Nigerian women. It is a slap in the face. It's a complete insult to Nigerian women. We contribute to the economy of this country. We hold up half the sky. We pay our taxes. Come election time, our votes count to vote you people in, which is exactly why our votes must count to vote them out. Anybody that voted against women does not deserve to serve us in the National Assembly. They must all be voted out, every single one without exception. It is a complete disgrace.
And very well said, because we also fail to realize that women have the largest voting bloc.
Of course we do.
We fail
Who
to
comes out
realize
to
that.
elect you? How dare you?
And if women have the largest voting bloc and something that is pertinent to the rights of women, which is supposed to even be a no-brainer, the fact that we're even talking about it at this time means that we've lost it. We're mad as a people. The fact that we're still talking about the rights of women in 2022, the fact that a woman can't even confer citizenship on the man that she marries means that we're a backward nation. We might be in 2022, but with that decision the National Assembly took, we're as good as being in 16th century Oliver Cromwell, England.
And if I could finish, because I had not quite finished. It's also important that men who work in female-dominated industries are also respected because they also have the right to be nurses.
Right.
They have the right to work in fashion, in health. You talk about male teachers are less than female teachers, but they have their rights as well, and they should not be looked down on either. We do need to progress as a society and respect each individual's autonomy and respect the fact that each individual has something to offer the larger society in whatever shape or form that is. And we are all equal. That is a point to be stressed.
Yeah.
Different does not mean unequal.
I fully agree. Fully agree.
Good news, Tondo. In the U.S., the United States female soccer team, they just got
Equal
victory.
pay, right?
Yes, I was so proud of them.
Equal pay. So we hope that someday Nigerian women will get to that point, and we can have a female vice president and president of Nigeria.
Yes,
and also female governors. You know, one of our own here wants to be governor in Ogun State.
Yeah, let's support her.
So women too should go out there.
We've never had one that was elected. We've had one, but she wasn't elected.
Virginia.
And it's always, a woman will fit as the deputy governor. Why is it that the woman is not top on the ballot and then a man as deputy governor?
It's sickening.
Okay,
So
thank you
those are the
very much,
conversations we need to have in society.
Thank you.
Rotus, for being so women-friendly on the occasion of International Women's Day.
Thank you.
But you know the implications.
I know the
We
implications.
are waiting for the implications.
For sure.
The implications, police.
For International Women's Day.
For sure.
No, he knows what I'm saying.
For sure.
He got the message.
In that group as well.
And you too. The implications apply to you too.
Yes, yeah, there too.
Show that you are women-friendly.
Thank you. Now for an update on the COVID-19 pandemic, Adeswa Omoran is here with us. Good morning, Adeswa.
I get it now.
Good morning, Tundu, and happy International Women's Day to you. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Dr. Bati, with the implications.
Good morning.
Morning. Well, picking it up from where Rotus left off, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres started his message to mark the day by praising girls and women everywhere in the world for their contributions in ending the COVID-19 pandemic. He noted that the pandemic has kept girls and women out of classes and out of workplaces as they face rising poverty and violence during this COVID-19 pandemic. Well, let's look at the global outlook for the pandemic so far as it enters its third year. Unfortunately, the official global death toll from COVID-19 has now eclipsed 6 million on Monday, according to the Johns Hopkins University tally. And the milestone recorded, of course, is the latest tragic reminder of the unrelenting nature of this pandemic, even as people are shedding masks, travel is resuming, and businesses are reopening around the world. Remote Pacific islands whose isolation had actually protected them for the past 2 years are now dealing with rising cases and deaths, fueled, of course, by the contagious Omicron variant. Hong Kong is seeing deaths soar. This is as it's testing its entire population of 7.5 million, 3 times this month alone, and it's maintaining its zero COVID-19 strategy. Well, here in Nigeria, Rivers and Kaduna states were responsible for the only 2 infections officially recorded in the country, and also no COVID-19 related deaths was reported in Nigeria. Vaccination update shows fully vaccinated coverage for Nasarawa State as well as Jigawa State has now surpassed the first dose coverage of every other state. The NPHCD also says that over 1 million people have now been fully vaccinated in Kano and Lagos State. Remember, that is a targeted eligible population, as Nigeria is not at the moment seeking to vaccinate all of its population. The World Health Organization yesterday said the spread of coronavirus in wildlife may facilitate emergence of new virus variants. In a joint statement, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the World Organization of Animal Health, as well as the World Health Organization said the introduction of SARS-CoV-2 to wildlife could result in the establishment of animal reservoirs. Although at the moment the COVID-19 pandemic is driven by human-to-human transmission, The SARS-CoV-2 virus is also known to infect animals. Well, these organizations I had mentioned are now calling on all countries of the world to take steps to ensure that they reduce the risk of coronavirus transmission from wildlife to humans, including, they gave 7 steps, but I think that the most important one was to suspend the sale of captured live wild animals in food markets as an emergency measure. Dr. Bati, some bushmeats, bad news for a lot of people there. But away from that, China is seeing a new surge of coronavirus despite its draconian zero COVID-19 strategy. Yesterday, we saw the mainland report 214 new cases of infections in the previous 24 hours, with the most 69 in Guangdong. Guangdong had to be closed down for a while because of new cases. And of course, Guangdong is bordering Hong Kong. We do not know if that strategy is going to be reimposed to close down the entire province just because of the 69 cases. There were also some 54 cases reported in Jilin province and 46 in an eastern province called Shandong. Well, Moderna Pharmaceuticals says that it has reached a memorandum of understanding with Kenya to build a COVID-19 vaccine manufacturing plant. Moderna plans to invest $500 million to produce the messenger mRNA vaccine in Kenya, and the facility is to produce 500 million doses annually. It also says that it could fill COVID vaccine doses at this facility as early as next year. And finally, this morning, there was a subtle hint of support for Ukraine as the Queen held her first in-person meeting since catching COVID-19. Well, Queen Elizabeth II posed in front of blue and yellow flowers, which are the national colors of Ukraine, at Windsor Castle as she received the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. The monarch, you will recall, tested positive for COVID-19 on the 20th of last month and has been carrying out only light duties since then, cancelling all events. Back to you guys.
We're happy the Queen is back. She's back to work. She's fit and she's doing quite well.
Yes.
But I want to talk about what is happening now in Africa as regards this second level of what I'll call sort of like a brain drain. African leaders have not learned from COVID. I thought they were going to use this as a sweet spot to be able to develop the African continent and develop the pharmaceutical sector. Despite many engagements that were had, despite many meetings in Kigali and the likes, that African leaders should invest in production plant for vaccines, we've not done anything. So what is happening now is if you don't do it, the West will do it for you, but they'll still make all the money. So it is the West that is investing 500 million, to be able to build messenger mRNA plants and the likes. And you know why they're doing all of this? Because obviously labor is cheaper for them. The price at which they'll get a pharmacist in America, different from Kenya, it's quite different. So they'll get cheaper, labor, they'll get better return on investment, the investment still goes to them, and the technology is not yours on the African continent. And what happens? The wahala continues. Just like I keep reminding a lot of people, despite the fact that we're celebrating Senegal for its great work it did during COVID-19, that Institut Pasteur is not owned by the Senegalese. It is Institut Pasteur, named after Louis Pasteur, the chemist himself, and we know how that goes. So I think African leaders should look inward. Rather than stealing money and going to put them in Swiss bank accounts, invest on the African continent. Invest on building pharmaceutical labs and the likes for the people. And also, I'd like to make a point. We need to increase vaccine uptake. Less than 5% yet in Nigeria. Less than 5% in Nigeria.
What do you make of reports at this that Moderna is now preparing to enforce its COVID vaccine patents on the wealthy countries? They've said they will never do that with the 90 poorest countries. But at the time when the vaccines were first approved, they said that until the pandemic is over, those patents would not be enforced. So for them, I think they're trying to signal to us that the pandemic is over and we're truly in the endemic phase. What's your take on that?
I couldn't agree less with you, Tundu. That has been a point of controversy. The definition of when is the pandemic over, that has not been cleared by anyone, not the WHO, not the big pharmas, not the countries. We just see that restrictions are being eased, and I think for the pharmaceuticals, it is time to call it over as a pandemic, and for countries to begin to tackle this as an endemic situation where every country goes with its tide at the moment. And basically that's it. It's been over 2 years, and for companies, everyone is out to make profits, whether we like it or not.
Okay, Adesua, let me touch upon the bushmeat dimension to COVID-19 that you brought up this morning. Well, you recall that after that WHO team was sent to Wuhan to conduct its investigation, one of the outcomes was that it was not established that there was a case of animal to human transmission. And in this latest statement by the WHO, the World Organization for Animal Health and the Food and Agricultural Organization, the FAO, they have restated that position. However, it has been proven, it has been seen that certain animals are also, are infected with SARS-CoV-2, like white-tailed deer in Canada, like minsk and some other categories of animals. And what this statement, what this statement is saying basically is that human beings have to be careful. And the recommendation is that health authorities around the world, should advise their citizens to be careful. The kind of, contact that they have with animals, particularly orphaned animals, sick animals, or dead animals. So when you brought up the bushmeat pepper soup dimension of it, in relation to Nigeria, I thought that that was a very great point. Because here in Nigeria, or in Africa, generally, maybe because of the poverty situation, any meat is considered meat. Whether an animal is orphaned, in fact, an animal that is orphaned is dead meat. If an animal is dead, in fact, it's a communal offering. So I think that the WHO, the FAO, and the IEO, they need to do a lot more, perhaps, in terms of educating the public. So the statement is useful, but the message has to go out there because in certain parts of the world, poverty and hunger doesn't make any differentiation between what meat should be consumed or should be interacted with. Now, you talked about China. Well, that's understandable. In the Guangdong axis, which is close to Hong Kong reporting over 17,000, 20,000 cases per day. It is, to be expected that it would go across the border. But what can be taken away from the Chinese story is simply that China is saying that it will not, on the basis of this, abandon its COVID-0 policy. Heavily criticized in the Western press, because the Western press talks about abuse of human rights and all that. But we see in the example of China an attempt to be proactive in terms of, okay, when a case comes up, what they are talking about is 214 new cases. In Guangdong, just about 69 cases. But you see that the zero COVID policy works in terms of their own expectations. As for Moderna collaborating with Kenya, I probably would have preferred Moderna collaborating with Nigeria. But it's good to see that some of these companies are making efforts, to promote the idea of vaccine equity. What Moderna wants to do in Kenya is drug manufacturing. And they're hoping that in 2023, they can also introduce fill and finish. As many centers as possible that we have in Africa. Maybe perhaps that will address the concern of vaccine availability in Africa. At the moment, we import over 90% of the vaccine of the COVID vaccines in Africa, and less than 10% of the entire population has been vaccinated. Thank you very much, Adesua.